right. This is 9 ESPN 30 for 30. However, it is my 98 for 98. The 98 seasons in the history of the New York Football Giants in 98 days. But probably not going to get it done in 98 days. However, I'm going to try to get it done before September 10th, which is the beginning of the season. And I should be able to get it done by then. We're forging ahead. We're almost almost into the 70s. Our stop tonight is at choo-choo stop 1969, the 45th season in the history of the New York Giants. 45th season in the history of the New York Giants. 50th season in the history of the NFL. And one thing you'll always know when you're looking at the Giants from 1969, especially, a lot of times, they're like you see their home jerseys, blue jerseys from 1969. They'll have a big patch. It's a nice size patch on their, I don't know what shoulder it is. I'm too stupid to figure that out. But on their shoulder pads, shoulder pads, right here, big patch. This is NFL on. I might say 50 on there, something like that. But if you ever see Giants, like maybe you see a picture of Fran Tarkenton scrambling around, he's got a big patch that says NFL on his shoulder. That's the 1969 team, because that's obviously the 50th season in the history of the New York Giants. I'm sorry, 50th season in history of the NFL. This is the 45th season in the history of the Giants. In 1969 was a bittersweet season for the Giants. They fired their coach from their coach from the 60s, pretty much, because Allie Sherman coached the Giants from 61 to 68. He made it into the 69 preseason. He got fired after the preseason. I'll go over that in a little bit as we go over their preseason games. So he got fired, and the guy, Alex Webster, who was on their coaching staff, he took over, and he coached the Giants from 69 to 73. Alex Webster was also a fan favorite. He was a player for the Giants, and he retired after the 64 season. The Giants, once again, it's very mediocre. See, they wound up 6-8. They were, I believe, was it 3-1? We're going to go over their record. I think they were 3-1 at one point, and then they lost 7 games in a row. And then they were 3-8. But they righted the ship at the end. They won their last week. So they won 3 out of their first 4. Then they won their last 3. But in between, they lost 7 in a row, and that's what just totally wiped out their whole season. Once again, just, a mediocre team at best. And once again, and for a mediocre team, you got mediocre results. This was also like, once again, in the midst of just bad drafts. They picked themselves a fine young lad by the name of Fred Dreyer in the first round of the 1969. Pick 13, was he? I think he might have been. We'll go over that too. But unfortunately, he didn't like playing in New York, and he only played 3 seasons for the Giants. And this is just on and on and on. So 1969, our first round draft pick, Fred Dreyer played 3 seasons for the Giants. So after 71, he was gone. Our 1970 first round pick was Jim Files. Good, solid middle linebacker, nothing super, but good, solid. He played 4 seasons for the Giants, and after 73, I think he became a priest or a minister. So he played 4 seasons for the Giants, and he was bye-bye. Our first round pick in 1971, Thompson. Very fast, not a football player, and shouldn't have been taken in the first round. And the Giants took him in the first round, and he played 71, 72, and I believe it was the first game in 1973. He got injured against the Oilers, and he never played for the Giants ever again. 72, we took Eldridge Small and Larry Jacobson. Eldridge Small was just horrible. I think he played 3 seasons for the Giants. I think he had 1 interception in 2 or 3 seasons. Larry Jacobson was a decent defensive lineman. He was an Outland Trophy winner for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. But he got injured, and his career was extremely short. Then it was just on and on and on. I mean, the first round pick, a couple of years they didn't have. 1973, they didn't have a first round pick because they traded a first round pick away to the Cleveland Browns because they got Jack Gregory. 1974, they took Hicks, who wound up being a good player, offensive lineman. He was the Outland Trophy winner from Ohio State, but he only played from 74 to 77 or 78 with the Giants, and that was it. 75, the Giants didn't have a first round pick because they traded that away to the Dallas Cowboys because they got Craig Morton. It was just 76, the first round pick was Troy Archer. He played 76, 77, 78, and then he got killed in an automobile accident. I mean, it was just a horrible time. I mean, in the 70s, they started getting some guys. But once again, the 1969 was not a very good draft for the Giants. We'll go over that too. What's up, Teddy? Giants 69, no preseason AFC games, and every other team did. Why? No, the Giants played the Jets in 69 preseason. They lost 37-14. And that's one of the reasons why Ali Sherman wound up getting fired. Uniform watch list, every uniform worn every game, and there's no 69 preseason games. No, what do they have? 1969. Well, let's go. Actually, the last game I'm going to go over, this last preseason game was in Jerry Park, which is in Montreal. They played the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the preseason game. So, all right, let's go over this study. The preseason games. All right, the first game they played at Lambeau Field. They lost to the Green Bay Packers, 22-21 on August 9th. August 17th, they played the New York Jets at the Yale Bowl. They lost 37-14. August 17th, 1969. That's pretty much the one that pretty much did an Ali Sherman because they got killed by the Jets, who were the defending Super Bowl champions. But, I mean, basically, it was kind of like it was the final nail in the coffin pretty much for Ali. Also, they didn't win any of their preseason games. They went 0-5. But, see, not only were the Giants a very mediocre team, and then they got killed by the Jets, so the Giants weren't even very relevant in the NFL, and they weren't even number one in their own city as the Jets just pummeled them 37-14. The Jets were a very good team in 68 and 69. So then the third preseason game on Saturday, August 30th, 1969, the Giants played in Princeton in the Palmer Stadium. They always played the Eagles at Palmer Stadium. There was some type of, a game it was called. I got to do a better job. That's horrible. It was some type of a game, and it was for like a charity or something like that. But every year they played the Eagles in Princeton at the Palmer Stadium for some type of charity, I believe it was. But the Giants lost 24-17. Then the Giants went to Bloomington, Minnesota, and they lost a tough one to the Vikings in preseason, 28-27. Then the final game that Ali Sherman. And this is it was in Montreal, Canada, at Jerry Park, I believe, which is the home of the Montreal Expos. The Giants played the Pittsburgh Steelers and lost 17-13. Let's see where we got here. And it's Ali Sherman. After that game, he was fired. So Giants fans who had started the chants defense at Yankee Stadium in the 50s now turned to the singing Goodbye Ali to Ali Sherman. Goodbye Ali to the tune of Goodnight Ladies. I'm not sure how that tune, the Goodnight Ladies, goes, but they were singing Goodnight Ali just before he was fired at the start of the 1969 regular season, just before the season. So those who made it up to Montreal to watch the Giants lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers 17-13 in Jerry Park in Montreal, because that's where the Montreal Expos played, right? So those who made it up to Montreal for the final preseason game serenaded him in French. So I guess they were singing Goodbye Ali in French, I guess. But sadly, it also said it got much uglier than that, though, too. It even got to the point of death threats. So he was, he was being, he was being threatened. I mean, he just, after the 61, 62, and 63, took him to 3 straight championship games. After that, they were just had a couple horrible seasons, and they were very mediocre. And he just, between the bad drafts and all of that, he was not going to turn it around. So he had to go, and the fans really started letting him have it, and unfortunately got the death threats. But so the Jets played, the Giants played the Jets, and from then on they played the Jets. And actually, in 1970, the Pittsburgh Steelers went to the AFC, the American Football Conference, after the merger, and the Giants always played the Pittsburgh Steelers. They always played the Jets. Let's see. And then I think the next season, I think they played the Chargers too in preseason. Yeah, they played the Jets, they played the Steelers, and they played the Chargers. And so after that, they kept playing. They were playing. So 1969, that was the first time that the Giants played a team from the AFL, which was the Jets, and they got killed. Oh, man. So the 1969 NFL season. Let's see here. I don't even have it up. The 1969 NFL season. So it was the 50th season in the history of the NFL. Let's see. There you go. See what pops up. All right. It was, and it's last before the AFL NFL merger, because remember, 1970, the AFL and the NFL merged. There was 16 teams in the NFL, and there were 10 in the AFL. So they merged. So in 1970, there was one big NFL with 26 teams in it. To honor the NFL's 50th season, a special anniversary logo was designed, and each player wore a patch on their jerseys with this logo throughout the season. Per agreement made during the 1967 season, New Orleans Saints and the New York Giants switched divisions, returning to the 1967 alignment. So the Giants returned back. So for one season, the Saints, for one in 69, it was the Cowboys, the Redskins, the Saints, and the Eagles. And the Giants the Giants and the Saints switched. They went from one division to the other division. So the Giants were in the Capital Division in 1968. In 1969, they went to the Century Division. But then in 1970, the Giants went back with the Cowboys, the Redskins, and the Eagles. And actually, it was the NFC East, which was the Cardinals, the Giants, the Eagles, the Redskins, and the Cowboys. So it was 5 teams in the NFC East in 1970. So the season ended up with the Minnesota Vikings defeating the Cleveland Browns in the NFL championship game, earning the right to go to the Super Bowl, and where the Kansas City Chiefs defeated the Oakland Raiders 17-7 in the AFL championship game. And then they wind up obviously facing each other in the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 4, and Kansas City won 23-7. They really dominated that game. Let's see here. As was the case the previous season, the NFL champion was not crowned as the world champion because the Vikings 23-7 lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. This occurrence can no longer happen in the AFL, and the NFL completed their merger the following season in 1970, realigned into 2 13-team conferences, the AFC and the NFC, in one league, the NFL, with the conference champions meeting in the Super Bowl. The 1969 draft, was held January 28th and 29th at the New York City's Belmont Plaza Hotel. With the first pick, the Buffalo Bills selected running back O.J. Simpson from the University of Southern California, the winner of the Heisman Trophy. So he was a good pick. Let's see. Then there was the division races. Let's see. I mean, in the Eastern Conference, there was the Capital Division and the Century Division. So in the Eastern Conference, the Capital Division, the Cowboys wind up winning with a record of 11-2-1. Once again, they were a very, very good team, good defense, lots of offense. In the NFL Century Division, the division where the Giants were at, the Browns won handily. The Browns were 10-3-1. The Giants were in second place. They were 6-8. So they were 5 games behind the Browns. And as I said, in the Capital Division, the Redskins were in second place. They were like 3 games behind the Cowboys. So there wasn't even any close races there. In the Western Conference, there was the Coastal Division with the Rams, the Colts, the Falcons, and the 49ers. The Rams won. They had a record of 11-3. The Baltimore Colts were 8-5-1. So they were a couple games behind the Rams. Then in the Central Division of the Western Conference, there was the Minnesota Vikings, the Lions, the Packers, and the Bears. The Vikings won with a record of 12-2. The Lions were in second place with a record of 9-4. So, it was a little close, but still the Vikings. And actually, the thing was with the Vikings, interesting, because they were a very good team in 1969. First game in the 1969 season, which we're going to go over, the Minnesota Vikings came in, played the Giants at Yankee Stadium. They came in, they were heavy favorites. The Giants won 24. The Giants were down 23-10 with about 5-6 minutes to go in the game, somewhere around there. Giants scored 2 touchdowns in the final 5-6 minutes of the game and won 24-23. So the Vikings' first game of the season, they lost. So they're 0-1. They proceeded to win the next 12 games, and then they lost their final game of the season to make them 12-2. I think they lost to the Falcons the last game of the season, if I'm not mistaken here. Yeah, they lost to the Falcons 10-3 in Atlanta, but it didn't matter because when they played the Falcons in the final game of the season, this is the Vikings I'm talking about. They were 12-1. They wrapped up the division and everything like that, so it really didn't matter. But the Vikings were 12-2. They lost their first game and the last game of the season, and their first game of the season they lost was to the Giants. So that started off Alex Webster's coaching career. He was 1-0. It was a great game, very exciting game. Then we had the playoffs. Playoffs. Yep. Yes, we had the playoffs. So we had the Cleveland Browns and the Dallas Cowboys faced each other in one of the playoff games. The Cleveland Browns won 38-14. In the other one, we had the Rams and the Vikings. This wound up being a very, very good, very exciting game. The Vikings would prevail 23-20, which led the Vikings and the Browns for the NFL championship game, which was hosted in Metropolitan Stadium in Minnesota. The Vikings would go on, and they were up 27-0, after 3 quarters, I think it was. I think the Browns scored a touchdown in the final quarter, and the Vikings wound up winning 27-7. So it was a very, very the championship game was not very much. So the Vikings went, they hosted the championship game. They won 27-7, so they earned the right to go to the Super Bowl. In the AFL, in the championship, their championship game, the Kansas City Chiefs played in Oakland. They won 17-7. So that's why the Chiefs, they won the AFL, and the Vikings won the NFL. So that's why they wound up facing each other in the Super Bowl. And it wasn't much of a Super Bowl. As I said, the Chiefs really dominated that one. They won in Tulane Stadium in New Orleans on January 11th. They won 23-7. It wasn't much of a Super Bowl. The most valuable player went to Roman Gabriel, the quarterback of the Rams. The coach of the year was Bud Grant of Minnesota, as well he should have. They were 12-2. Offensive Rookie of the Year went to Calvin Hill, the running back for the Cowboys. Defensive Rookie of the Year went to Mean Joe Green, the defensive tackle for Pittsburgh, one of the greatest defensive tackles of all time. All right, so that's that. So let's go over. And now we have the draft. All right, here we go. And as I said, in the first round, right, the Giants pick pick 13. Okay, they took from San Diego State. They took Fred Dreyer, who wound up being a very good pick for the New York Giants. You can't complain. Problem was he didn't like New York. I'm not sure if he didn't like the city or if he didn't like the organization, or he maybe didn't like the city and the organization. Maybe he didn't like the owner or something, but he did not want to play in New York. So after that, I guess they had him for 3 years. And after 1971, he left and he went to play with the Rams for the rest of his career. He had a long career. So he played with the Rams from 1972 until when? 1981. So he played 3 years for the Giants. Then he played 10 years for the Rams. So he was a very, very good. He wound up with 103 career sacks. Of course, they weren't, official career sacks, but he had over 100 sacks. Very, 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 very good career. Unfortunately, as I said, the Giants could have used him on their defense throughout the 70s without question. But unfortunately, he did not want to be in New York. So once again, the Giants, it's just their draft picks. Even when they do play for the Giants, they don't play very long for the Giants at all. So round 2, let's see, the Giants did not have a pick. Round 3, Giants took Vernon Vanoy, a defensive end from Kansas. He played for the Giants, 1 year. And actually, he didn't even play in 1969. He played for the Toronto Argonauts in 1969. He played 1 year for the Giants in 1971. So, I mean, just a horrible pick. Another horrible pick. I mean, he made it in the NFL, but he played 1 season for the Giants. Just absolutely horrible. Let's see. That was the only pick they had in the round 3. Round 4. Did they have a pick? Yeah, they took Rich Houston, a wide receiver from East Texas State, who was, nothing special. I mean, he played like 4 or 5 years for the Giants, and that was pretty much it for the end of his career. Let's see, round 5. Did they have a pick? Round 5? Nope. Don't see nothing in round 5. Round 6. Yeah, see, I mean, those are the Giants. They traded away. They traded away. I know they traded away. What did they get? Okay, they traded with Atlanta for running back Junior Coffey in late October. So I mean, they were always trading, to get players because their drafts were not very, very good. They took Al Brenner, a defensive back from Michigan State, in round 7. I mean, Al Brenner. What did he do? He played 2 seasons for the Giants, 1969 and 1970, and then he spent the rest of his career in the Canadian Football League. So he was not very good. Round 8. Then again, round 7, you're not going to get, most part, you're not going to get great talent. Round 8, the Giants took George Irby, a running back from Tuskegee. I don't think he made it in the NFL. Then they took Ray Hickey, a linebacker from Texas A&I. Yep, there's a wasted pick right there. Round 10, the Giants took Lou Gallardi, a defensive tackle from Dayton. You can forget about that one. Round 11, the Giants took Frenchie Fuqua, who played a few years for the Giants, but then he wound up going with a lot of some of his final years were with the Steelers. So I mean, he was a decent player for the Giants, not bad. How long did he only played a couple years for the Giants, though? Once again. Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. He played 1 season for the Giants. That was it, 1960. I thought he played a couple. He played 1 season for the Giants. Yeah, but then he went to the Steelers from 1970 to 76, and he won. What did he win? He won 2 Super Bowls with them. So good for him. But once again, I mean, the Giants, when they do draft a player, the player doesn't stay with the Giants very long. All right, let's see. Round 12. I'm sorry. Round 12, the Giants took Harry Blackney, a running back from Maryland. Bad pick. Well, round 12, but he didn't play for the Giants. Then they took Richard Perrin, a defensive back from Bowling Green. Let's see, round 14, the Giants took Steve Smith, a kicker from Weber State. Forget about that pick. Round 15, it was this is where they took Don Herman from Waynesburg. Okay, so this was a good pick, all right, because not only that, but he played, 6 seasons for the Giants, 69 to 74. He was a okay tight end, okay wide receiver, decent. Nothing super spectacular, but he was decent. But he actually played 6 seasons for the Giants, which is a small miracle for the Giants. All right, then in round 15, the last 2, round 16, the Giants took Byron Jones, a linebacker from West Texas State. Forget about that one. In round 17, the Giants took Ken Riley, a linebacker from Texas Arlington. You can forget about that one. And then they have notable undrafted players. The Giants didn't have anybody. They took they got some undrafted players, but none of them actually did anything in the NFL. So basically, the Giants had like a couple guys, but even the guys that, except for Don Herman, a lot of the other guys that actually made the team and all of that didn't play long at all for the Giants. Once again, just goes to show you, that it just, the mediocre and they bad drafts, and they're bringing in bad picks to replace bad players, and you're just going to get, they're lucky. They were saying a lot of you going to look at it, they were even lucky to be 6-8. A lot of it was, I think a lot of it was in part thanks to Fran Tarkenton. So the Giants started this season. Once again, this is odd because usually they always started their season on the road. Here they started their first game at home on Sunday, September 21st against the Minnesota Vikings. They would win 24-13. They were down 23-10 with about 5-6 minutes to go in the game. They scored 2 touchdowns in the final 5 minutes of the game and pulled it out 24-23. Very, very exciting game. All right, then we had, then the next week they went to play the Detroit Lions, and they lost 24-0. So they went to Detroit on Sunday, September 28th. They played in Detroit. They lost 24-0. Then they rebounded with 2 wins. Right? Thankfully, they beat the Bears because the Bears won 1 game all year in 1969. So the Giants beat the Bears 28-24 at Yankee Stadium on Sunday, October 5th. The Bears were winning 24-21, and the Giants scored a touchdown, I think, kind of late. Who the heck scored it? Because I know the Bears were winning, and then the Giants scored their touchdown late in the fourth quarter. Joe Morrison, a 26-yard pass from Fran Tarkenton in the fourth quarter, and Pete Gogolak with the extra point made it 28-24. As I said, the Bears were a horrible team that year. They won 1 game all year. So the Giants, after 3 games, they were 2-1. Then the following week, Pittsburgh came to town. So the Giants played the Pittsburgh Steelers at home Sunday, October 12th, and they would win 10-7. So now the Giants are 3-1. New coach, Alex Webster. Right. This is the three A's. They had Ali Sherman. After he was gone, they took Alex Webster. Then after he was gone, they had Bill Arnsparger. So they had 3 A coaches in a row. So now Alex Webster, the coach, after 4 games, they're 3-1, looking pretty good. But unfortunately, they would lose their next 7 games. Starting with Sunday, October 19th, on the road in Washington, they lost 20-14. Following week, on Monday, weird, there wasn't Monday Night Football, I can tell you that much, but Monday, October 27th, they lost in Dallas against the Cowboys 25-3. Following week, on Sunday, November 2nd, the Eagles would come to town once again. The Giants would lose 23-20. Now the Giants are 3-4. Following week, Sunday, November 9th, the Giants would go to St. Louis to play the Cardinals. They would lose 42-17. Now the Giants are 3-5. Following week, Sunday, November 16th, it's New Orleans. This is unbelievable. The New Orleans Saints would come to town. And I'm going to check this out. This boggles my mind. The New Orleans Saints came to town. And in Yankee Stadium, the Giants lost to the Saints 25-24. Their field goal kicker, Dempsey, kicked, I think it was 6 field goals. Let me count here. The Saints scored 1 touchdown and kicked 6 field goals. Tom Dempsey kicked 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah, 4. 4 field goals? Oh, okay, 4. My bad. Let's see here. The kick. Okay, he must have missed an extra point. So he kicked 4 field goals. Okay, so he kicked 4 field goals for him. Let's see. I want to see how many. I mean, he was not a very good field goal kicker, accuracy-wise. So in 1969, he was 22 out of 41. Yeah. Yeah. So he kicked like 50% of his field goals. But of course, in this one game, he made 4 field goals. Yeah, just to go to show you. But so the Giants lost. I got an embarrassing game at home against the Saints, who were not very good. The Giants lost 25-24. So now after the Giants lost to the Saints, now they fell to 3-6. The following week, they went to Cleveland to play the Browns on Sunday, November 23rd. In Cleveland, the Giants lost 28-17. Now the Giants are 3-7. It gets worse. The following week, Sunday, November 30th, in Green Bay, the Giants would lose to the Packers 20-10. Now the Giants are 3-8. Oh, could it get any worse? No, actually, the Giants rebounded and they won their last 3 games of the season. Sunday, December 7th, the Cardinals came to town. The Giants would win 49-6. All right. So now the Giants are 4-8. They're still out of, obviously out of title contention and all of that, but all they got left to play for is pride. So on Sunday, December 14th, they would go play in Pittsburgh against the Steelers. They would win 21-17. Now the Giants are 5-8. 1 game left to go. They're 5-8. Sunday, December 21st, the Cleveland Browns came to Yankee Stadium, and the Giants would beat the Cleveland Browns 27-14. Now the Giants finished the season 6-8. Let's see, Frank Tarkin then had a nice season. He what do you have? 23 touchdown passes, only had 8 interceptions. He threw for over 2,900 yards. He started and played in all 14 games. A nice season. The problem was, the Giants had 24 touchdown passes. They only gave up 18 as a defense. They got 19 interceptions on their defense. So they did very, very well. And the Giants, as a whole team, only had 8 interceptions all year. Very, very impressive. One of the problems was, amongst many, is their running game was not very good. They only had 1,593 yards rushing for the whole season. They had 113 yards a game rushing, which was, back then was not very, very good. They gave up 146 yards a game rushing. They gave up 14 rushing touchdowns, and they scored 8. So, their run defense was not super spectacular. Just very, very, very mediocre. As I said, they were able to score some points, but once again, they gave up points. Let me see, they scored 18.9 points per game. So basically, they scored like 19 points a game. They gave up 21 points a game. So very, very, very mediocre. So you get very, very mediocre. You get very mediocre results. They were 6-8. 1967 and 1968, they were 7-7. So they were just floating around in mediocrity, never getting any better. This, unfortunately for the Giants, this would also be Homer Jones's last season with the Giants. They would trade him in the off season. It wound up being a very, very good trade for the Giants because they traded Homer Jones to the Cleveland Browns. Homer Jones played one more season with the Browns, and then he tried to, in 1971, he tried to play with the St. Louis Cardinals, but his knees were just too bad, and he had to retire. So he played one more season after this, 1970, with the Browns. The Giants traded him to the Browns, and the Giants got Ron Johnson and Jim Kinnicky. Now, Jim Kinnicky, he only played 2 seasons for the Giants, but Ron Johnson wound up being very, very special. Ron Johnson, in 1970, became the first Giants running back to ever gain over 1,000 yards rushing. Ron Johnson gained over 1,000 yards rushing in 1970, 1972, and then in 1973, I believe he missed 2 games, and he still had over 900. He had 903 yards rushing, I think it was, in 12 games. And that was with the team in 1973. The Giants were 2-11-1. The Giants were horrible, and yet he still had over 900 yards rushing, and he missed 2 games. So if he played the whole season, he probably would have had over 1,000 yards for the 3rd time. So, and he was a dynamic, a very good running back. And he was a very good wide receiver, not wide receiver, but a very good receiving back as well, too. A very all-around back, very, very good. His problem was, as it was with many backs back then, is that, just injuries. He had too many injuries. And, after 75, I think he played from the Giants from 70 to 75. After 75, he wound up going with the Cowboys in 1976, but he never made the team because the Cowboys running back depth was just too good. And Ron Johnson, with his injuries and all, was nothing was kind of like a shell of himself. So he never actually made the Cowboys in 1976. But the drafted the Giants, the trade that the Giants made, they traded away Homer Jones after the 69 season, wound up really working out well for the Giants. But Homer Jones, what did he have? He had like 42 receptions for 744 yards. He averaged 17.7 yards a reception. Fantastic. Really, really fantastic. But he only found the end zone one time all year, which was, I think he had like 20 touchdowns the past 2 years combined. So you can just kind of tell. I mean, he was averaging well over 20 yards a reception. He was averaging a bunch of touchdowns every year. 1969, his injuries were just catching up to him. And you can tell he only averaged 17.7 yards a reception, which is still phenomenal. But for him, it was well below his normal. And as I said, he only found the end zone one time all year. So, I mean, the Giants had 8 rushing touchdowns, 24 passing touchdowns, and just, the 8 rushing touchdowns is, that's kind of bad. So, I mean, I said, once again, just very mediocre. I mean, Joe Morrison led the Giants in rushing with 387 yards. 14 games, he had 387 yards. That's what led the team. Junior Coffey, who the Giants got from the Atlanta Falcons, he was second. He had 343 yards rushing. Ernie Coy, one of the baby Bulls, he played till 1970, I think, with the Giants. Ernie Coy, he was third. He had 300 yards rushing. So basically the first top 3 guys, the 3 running backs, the top 3 for the Giants were in 1969 with Joe Morrison, Coffey, and Coy. And you combine all their rushing together, and it was like 1,000 yards. Nothing special at all. Tucker Fredrickson, once again, he was banged up all year long pretty much. He only played in 5 games. He was our first-round pick in 1965. He was the number 1 overall pick in the 1965 draft. So he's a decent running back. He wasn't fast. He wasn't flashy, nothing like that. He was just decent, but he got injured all the time. But he was a very good receiving running back as well, too. But he only carried the ball 33 times all year for 136 yards. I mean, it's just very, very, very mediocre. As I said, the Giants had, just, bad, I'm not saying bad teams, just very mediocre teams. Their drafts were not good, so they were not replenishing any of these guys. Hey! Rand show children are people too was RIP of that's incredible. Minnesota had better cameras, that's all, in the city. They made more TV shows in the 60s. Didn't know that. Anybody named Franco is my enemy. Oops, sorry to hear that. Jeb York must be stopped. This new Jeb York guy real. Oh, my goodness. Tell you what, Teddy, you got away with words, brother. You got away with words. All right, so let's see. So that was the Giants just, started off okay. In the middle, they were horrible. Then they finished up the season, won what the race. I mean, very, very mediocre. But the Super Bowl 4, the Chiefs, Jan Stenerud would kick 3 field goals to put in the first half to put put them up. Was it? Whoops. This is the scoring here. Put the Chiefs up. It was 9-0. Then they scored a touchdown to put. I think it was was it 16-0 at halftime? Yeah, it was 16-0 at halftime. The Vikings turned the ball over a ton of times. How many times they turned the ball over? 4 or 5 times, and they threw it 3 interceptions. Does it say how many fumbles they lost there? I mean, it should say how many fumbles they lost. Fumbles lost, they lost, yeah. So they threw 3 interceptions and they lost 2 fumbles. So the Vikings had 5 turnovers. Chiefs had 1. So, I mean, oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah, Jan Stenerud kicked a 48-yard field goal, and he kicked a 32-yard field goal, and he kicked a 25-yard field goal. And then Mike Garrett ran a 5-yard touchdown run in with about 5 minutes to go in the first half to put the Chiefs up 16-0. Now, don't forget 16-0 back in 1969. That's 3 scores, unlike today where it's only 2. So that was 3 scores. So the Vikings got the ball in the third quarter. They moved all the way down the field, scored a touchdown. Dave Osborne, I believe, 4-yard touchdown run. He plowed it in. Now it's 16-7. Now the Vikings have a little bit of a hope, a little bit of a chance, right? They still need to score 2 more times, but that was squashed a couple minutes later. Otis Taylor had a 46-yard touchdown reception from Len Dawson. Jan Stenerud made the kick, put him up 23-7, which once again put him back up 3 scores. And there was only like pretty much like the fourth quarter was left after that play was over, and so it was pretty much a non-contest. I mean, the Chiefs was certainly the better team. The Vikings went to 4 Super Bowls, and every one they got totally dismantled in all 4 of them. It was rather embarrassing. So this was another one of them. They 23-7, but as I said, that was a 1969 season for the Giants. Once again, bad drafting, mediocre players. You're going to get mediocre results. And as I said, the Giants with their drafts, they were not able to replace the players and upgrade their players because they just couldn't draft. A lot of what they had to do to get good players, they were trading away their draft picks. So it's just a bad time for the Giants. Once again, from 1964 to 1980, the Giants, no playoff appearances. They only had 2 winning seasons. So just we're right in the middle of that wilderness era where like nothing was going on. However, my personal favorite season of all time is the 1970 season. Why? Well, because that's the first time I remember watching the Giants on TV. I'm sure I saw them in 68 and 69 and all that, but I don't actually remember it. I remember watching the Giants week 13 against the St. Louis Cardinals in St. Louis. So I remember actually watching that. So the 1970 season is my personal favorite. And actually another one is because the Giants actually had a winning record. They were 9-5. That was one of the 2 seasons from 1964 to 1980 where the Giants, one of 2 seasons the Giants actually had winning records. 1970 and 1972. They had the 1970, they were 9-5. 1972, they were 8-6. So they only had 2 winning seasons from 1964 to 1980, the wilderness era. I mean, it was just one disappointing season after the other. So I'll be back again tomorrow with the 1970 season, which once again is my personal favorite. The Giants had a winning record, and they came this close to making the playoffs, but it was just not meant to be. So that wraps up pretty much the 1969 season of the Giants. Once again, another mediocre season, but the 1970 season would be a winning season, close to making the playoffs. They were this close to making the playoffs, but the Rams just snatched it away. So that pretty much wraps up the 1969 season, which was the 45th season. I'll be back again tomorrow. Right, Teddy? I'll be back again tomorrow, buddy. I'll be back again tomorrow with the 1970 season, which just happened to be the 46th season in the history of the New York Giants. I'll see you then.